technical difficulties. It's just the way live streams are. We're back. I don't know. Like, let me actually. I'm actually go to my YouTube channel and actually see, like, if like the former live stream is even there. So, oh yeah, it was.
We're still
So I
going.
guess, yeah, I guess we're just still gone. So it's all good. So Derek Toledo. I don't know if the former footage was deleted, but basically what happened is we had technical difficulties and my mic wasn't loud enough at all. I don't know what happened. It worked last time. It's not working now. But yeah, we were talking about we talked about homeschooling and music and musical development. Both how he developed and during his music career and how I'm developing now and the story of how the Quiet Hounds came to be and just the music industry and how it's developed. And I was actually going to ask you while
Yeah.
you're talking about the evolution of how you started with the label and then you went indie with Deke and like all this stuff and how they came to be, like from when you started with Transits of Arc, like in the early
Mm.
2000s. How's the music industry different now? Like, well, what's the difference?
Oh my gosh, it's like a completely different industry. I mean, I
Yeah,
think
nine
when we
day.
were when we were coming into it on our music label in early 2000s, records were still a thing. I think records were on the decline,
Yeah,
but people were still paying to get made
yeah,
and putting a lot of money behind them. Radio was still a big part of promotion. Of course,
yeah,
touring hadn't changed, but what you would see over the course of 10 years is the rise of streaming, and so by 2012, 2013, Spotify had pretty much built a whole new model for listening to music,
yeah,
and with the advent of the iPhone, everybody wanted a gazillion songs in their pocket, So, um,
yeah,
I think there was a good bit of resistance around, uh, submitting to the notion of streaming. I was one of them.
yeah,
I didn't want it to be successful, but like
yeah,
it was time for it to be disrupted because
yeah,
consumers were buying, they were paying whatever, $10, $15 for a record, sometimes $20 for a record. Maybe there was two or three like decent songs on a record,
yeah.
these major labels would be putting out, I mean, it was just people were buying plastic, and now
Yeah.
they don't have to anymore.
It's
And
it's
yeah,
crazy. It's crazy
yeah,
the kind of access that I have. Like, I literally
yeah,
have playlists of hundreds and hundreds of songs that I have, like, curated, and I'll, like, have an artist,
yeah,
I'll have one song, and I can listen to anything. And, like,
yeah,
I like it even when I was a kid, I kinda grew up, like, in a different era 'cause I would have, like, tape and, like, CDs, and I never really
yeah,
used streaming when I grew up, and then, like, when I finally, like, started using devices, like,
hmm,
around, like, when I was, like, maybe 12, 13, like, I just basically, like, was like, "What
hmm.
is going on? I have so much music." It was shocking, and it was amazing to see, but
Mhm.
it's really, like, it's a fascinating thing because it's, like, almost like an information overload where, like,
Mhm.
beforehand, you kinda, like, cherished your, like, every
Yeah.
bit you could have, like, I have a vinyl collection, and there's this, like, really the cathartic kinda, like, tactile thing,
Mhm.
like, playing the record, and you it's, like, not you can't, like, skip to the last song on the record or skip to a middle song, like, you can, but it's a lot of work, you
Mhm.
wanna listen to the whole thing, it's like a full experience,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
It's this thing,
Yeah.
and it's lost, like, I know people
Mhm.
listen to
Yeah.
records, but, like, you just, like, just put on a playlist, and then it's just there's
Yeah.
no, like
That's right.
it broke the album model, in
It
many
really
ways.
did.
Yeah,
It
because
really
like
did. And people don't wanna pay for that anymore, right? I think people will are fine with their subscriptions and their
yeah,
access to a gazillion things. And so, I think, in 2011, we were like, "Screw it, let's just give away our music," like, "Let's
yeah,
see what happens if we give it away."
yeah,
And so we had no intention of making any money off of Quiet Hounds.
yeah,
But what we would find is that, if you're an indie label and it's not getting, or if you're an independent, you're not slicing up the pie like 20,000 ways, you
Yeah.
know, um, you can actually make some decent money in streaming.
Yeah.
And we didn't realize that. Until we started getting spins. I think at our in our
Yeah.
at our height, we were at like 40,000 spins or 40,000
Yeah.
listens a month.
Wow.
Um, and that was significant enough to pay rent, for
Yeah.
and cover our expenses, which was, um, more than without even having to like go lug a bunch of gear into a club, which was pretty cool.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah,
great
yeah,
way of
so
like, yeah, if you actually have like a passive like income through that, it's amazing. It really
yeah,
is.
yeah, totally, totally, and I
Yeah.
I think, the music is a vehicle for merchandising, it's a vehicle
Yeah,
for live performance, so
for
you can still
sure.
make really good money on performance and merch, the margins are great, so you build an
Yeah.
audience and you keep them captive, and then there's other, like, monetary streams like Patreon, those types of
Yeah.
models where you're doing, like, um, kind of custom content,
Yeah.
exclusive content, that kind of stuff. Um, I think Instagram even has now like a exclusive content kind of vehicle on
Mhm.
it. But
Yeah.
anyway, there's options. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many options, and there's like it's a constant like almost like I think like a race to make it more exclusive and more exclusive because the
Yeah.
problem is that it's so like it's overwhelming how much music
Mhm.
out there is down there. There's just a pool of just stuff that it's so hard to sift through, and it's also like
Yeah.
like, it's like the album of like like the Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd. They like it's like the story, the wall. You listen to it and
Mhm.
it's like that's why, like, I've seen that, like, singles are, like
Mhm.
I've made, like, look like they're more successful than an album 'cause they're easier to put on, like, a they're like, "Oh, that's the song." You put it on a playlist, and, like, I even, like when I released L Long Night, I had, like my album Silhouettes was getting added to, like, these playlists on Spotify
Mhm.
'cause the playlists, like, on Spotify, they automatically do, like, the AI or whatever, the system.
Mhm.
They'll just add you
Mhm.
into things. And Long Night, it was already added into, like, 2 other playlists, like and I was like, "It's crazy, it's
Mhm.
completely
Yeah.
different."
Yeah, and I mean, just think about, like, the effort you put into a song, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you do a whole album of that. That's a lot of material,
yeah,
um,
a lot of
for
hours.
yeah, a lot of hours. If you're anything like us, like, we would sweat, and put a lot of sweat and, blood and
Yeah,
tears into a record, and people would maybe listen to, like, 2 or 3 songs on it,
yeah,
um, uh, you know, but with the single, you can really put a lot of, like, heat behind that content,
yeah,
and as a tool for testing, it's really cool for us to go,
yeah,
well, we could throw a single out there. We're not sure, like, if anybody would like it. We don't really care, but, like, we'll put it out
yeah,
there, and it's not as much skin off our backs to put that out into the
yeah,
world, and we'll put some, maybe some promo behind it, um, but it gets its day in the sun. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And every track gets its day in the sun. So whether people like it or not, like, if they follow us, they'll see it, right?
yeah,
I had just a really close friend of mine, like, a couple of years ago, was like, "Hey, I didn't know that you put a record out in 2017." I was just like, "Oh my gosh, that was, like, the most painstaking record
uh,
we put out into the world." And because when you put a record out, it's just like
yeah,
a one blip, like, if they miss it,
yeah,
if you're just not in that sort of cycle,
yeah,
for that listener, you know, um, uh, but if they don't listen to a single, so what, like, that's
yeah.
fine.
Yeah, like,
Come back.
for me, when I find an artist or something, I listen to the whole discography, I'll go like, "What's their first album?" I'm gonna go from the bottom to the top. But, like, like, even for Silhouettes, I worked so hard on that record. That was the first
Mhm,
time I really delved into, like, mastering and,
mhm.
like, really
Yeah.
really honing my skills was that album.
Mhm.
I spent countless sleepless nights thinking about it and recording
Mhm.
late into the night and just like listening. So part of my
Mhm.
ear training was that. And
Yeah.
it's hard to like work
Yeah.
so hard and then like have it not like catch on for something that big. And
Yeah.
singles are the best way to test. It's like
Yeah,
that's
I
why
mean,
the
you
yeah
could, like, you know, think about the cycle for a typical artist, you know, putting out a 12-song record that's, like, maybe once a year, you know?
yeah
To put a whole year's worth of work into something that, like, maybe, you know, only 2 or 3 tracks will see the light of day, you know, in
mhm,
someone's playlist or whatever.
yeah
That's tough for us to swallow. So, like, you
yeah
know, when we started Quiet Hounds, we were like, you know, let's experiment with we did a couple records, then we were like, let's experiment with EPs. Let's see how
yeah
those do, you know? So we did, like, you know, a lot of, like, if you look at our discography, like, you know, 4 or 5 song
yeah
EP, and then we're just like, "Screw it, let's just go for the single." That's not to say that, like, the record, you know, there's no art in records. I mean, because I think
no
records are amazing. I love listening to records through and through, especially if there's some
too.
cohesion there, you know?
It's
Um
it's it's a special experience, like, having the
Yeah.
records you'll play, and every time you, like, just a wash of memories and emotion, like, the
Yeah,
song comes
yeah,
just listen to the whole thing, and it's like,
yeah.
there's something special to that, but
Yeah. And
yeah,
I sometimes wonder, you know, like, if I mean, if we were bigger, like, if we would put more muscle behind a record, you know, if we had a
yeah,
bigger audience. But I think for I mean, you know, for a small, band like us, you know, it's more effective for us to put, you know, a single out into the world, kinda
yeah,
test the waters and see, you know, if our audience is still there, you know, check the pulse on the audience, you know,
yeah,
put some fresh content out there and then move
yeah,
on. So and we've had a whole record's worth of songs, for the past 6, 7 months,
yeah,
and we're just kinda sitting on them because we're like, "Well, okay, let's just wait to see, you know, the kind of wave dive down from Clumsy," which we released, you know,
yeah,
not was it 2 months ago, a month ago?
yeah.
Um, and so we're just gonna do it again in December, you know, what's the
Yes!
next
I'm
track?
excited.
We're gonna release another track in December and then come back with it. We've just, you know, we're just queuing them up, you
Yeah,
know, so and that's not to say, like, you wouldn't see a record in, like, you know, early spring of all of the singles that we released the past 6 months, you know,
yeah,
because there's no rules that say you can't do that,
yeah.
so we're gonna
Great
give
deal.
that a shot, yeah.
I'm excited, man. I can't wait. That's exciting.
Yeah,
I'm
but
probably think
yeah.
yeah, I'm probably thinking of releasing my next album in spring too.
Oh, good,
Yeah,
good, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
excited. The new year,
Keep it
gotta
coming,
start off
keep it
strong.
keep it coming, yeah, yeah. But
Whoa.
I think, like, the name of the game now, I mean, you asked me, like, "Hey, how things change," you know, like, I don't think you
Yeah,
can just release a piece of art once a year. I think you have to be
yeah,
releasing stuff all the time. You know, you got to be
yeah,
in people's faces, you know, just relevant all the time. So, you
yeah,
know, so that's kind of the name of the game right now is like, you know, how do you kind of take what you do well, put it out into the world, get
yeah,
feedback or collaborate with other people and, like, you know, put that out into the world. Just try a lot of different things, you know?
yeah,
I mean, you know, if I could go back, into my early career, I would have been like, "Dude, don't be so precious about what you're putting out to the world. Just, like, let
yeah,
people hear it," you know? And the longer you sit on something, like, man, it's just, you know, you're just
yeah,
preventing yourself from getting to the next great thing, you know?
yeah.
So
I completely agree, and it's like it's balancing, like quality, versus quantity and consistency. Like you don't want to just be just doing so much that you're just putting out just like, crap, and you're not like actually focusing on the quality. And so it's like that balance between like,
mhm.
putting in the time so it's like you feel like it's like oh, this perfect crafted thing, yet you're also being consistent. It's a completely
Yeah,
different thing. And it's
yeah.
like now that I've like, released music, it's like it's a completely different experience. I didn't realize how like easy and hard it would be, because I'm a minor and so I had to like it took forever to register with BMI. I
Mm.
tried
Oh,
to
wow.
with ASCAP. I started with ASCAP. They didn't want me. They were like, "Nah."
Mm.
They kept like ignoring the calls as a minor, and so We had to go to BMI, and then just registering everything as a minor is
Yeah.
just really, really hard.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
we're on BMI if it makes a difference.
BMI is awesome. It's so
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so much
They're
easier.
great, but I mean, you've got such a leg up. I mean, because like, most people don't put records out when they're 16. And you're 16, right? Yeah, I mean, so my first record, I think I was in my mid-20s before I've ever, got something printed to CD. I mean, that was a big deal for me,
Yeah,
but these days, gosh, I guess, you've got a platform,
yeah,
you can, you've got such a leg up on your career because you've just
yeah,
got so much experience putting things together in your studio. You kind of got a
yeah,
process already. You're already on publishing. You got
yeah,
publishing support behind you.
yeah,
Um, and so it's just you'll just keep building that network, and
yeah.
I mean, I think you're going to be in a good spot. By the time you're old and gray like me.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate that. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I just feel so grateful, just to have like because my dad was an entrepreneur. I remember like
Mhm.
my mom got cancer and my dad had to quit the career he had in New York because he was
Mhm.
successful. He's playing with Sean Pelton.
Mhm.
You keep making money. Being
Mhm.
he was doing well. It
Mhm.
was his dream. That was his thing, and he
Mhm.
had to quit that. Came out to California. He did
Mhm.
music a while. Met his best friend down in LA, and they started making music together. But he couldn't be a dad, because he was
Mhm.
constantly driving 5 hours down to LA. We lived like in the Central Valley, like right above Fresno, so like right by like
Mhm.
Yosemite. That's where like
Mhm.
I was born in Brooklyn, but I spent my like real childhood years down there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I lived on my great grandma's property, like all my
Yeah.
extended family. Like literally, I had my grandma, my grandpa, my great grandma, my grandma, and then all their
Mhm.
kids and their cousins. It
Yeah.
was crazy. We lived in the
Yeah.
garage. My dad was an English teacher at high school,
Mhm.
and he also taught music. And he taught
Yeah.
music production, and that's when like the Mac came into the school. It was like the first
Mhm.
computer school, one of like the first
Mhm.
ones that really started integrating that. So he like brought in like music production, and they would like make music in the class, and you were there. Yeah. So
Oh gosh, you were in the room that day?
yeah, of course I was. I was right on the side. I was just like, yeah, I was. I remember
I
that.
remember that. That was, we did an interview, right? Like,
Yeah,
with class, is that right?
yeah. It was
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was it was so cool, and like that's
Yeah.
and my dad came from doing that, and
Yeah.
he really like it was so painful. He didn't
Mhm,
really want to do music for years. He did it for like
mhm.
me and the kids at the
Yeah,
school, but it was hard giving that up,
yeah.
and
Well,
we're
he can live vicariously through you now.
yeah. But now that he started his own business, like I've seen like him transform. He's written,
Yeah.
over 20 books in the last 7 years.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
he's unbelievable. Like
Yeah.
he's so creative.
Mhm.
He's just a force of nature. And like I've like, been working alongside him the whole entire time.
Mhm.
I've
Yeah,
been
yeah, we've got a couple of his books at home, and my
really
wife is totally into permaculture. I mean, we're into it. So, like, yeah,
amazing.
I really admire what your dad's done. Just
Yeah.
very talented human being, and can see that you've taken on some of that. So, I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to seeing what you create here. So,
Yeah. I'm very excited. And my dad still a killer musician.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm recording an album for him. This
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's gonna be exciting. He's started releasing music again. It's gonna be fun.
That's cool.
But yeah,
That's awesome.
and I'm really excited because I'm actually working with my brother now, my little brother Oliver. He wants to be a
Oh,
graphic
okay.
designer, and
Ah,
so
alright.
starting a clothing company. He's unbelievable, but he's gonna be designing. Would be doing using my music to market it and whatnot. But we're gonna start a clothing.
Yeah. Okay, your brother's, is that who did the artwork for the single?
Yeah, that's him.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's
He's
cool.
so good. Like I was like, Oliver, we should find like one of those ocean pictures, and he's like, I'll find it. And we went back. He went through all the pictures and designed it. He's just freaking amazing. So proud of him.
That's good, that's good.
Yeah,
You got a marketing wing now. You got, like,
yeah.
all
Sorry about that. But yeah, it was just really, 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 really proud of him. So it's just
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, I'm really excited because right now I'm really kind of shaping my brand. You know, this is like the moment, like you said, like you started with Quiet Hounds and you started figuring out, you know, what was your like vision for the future. You know, I was like started off like as like, you know, just a project, and then it kind of
Mhm.
turned into this thing. That's what happened for me. You know, it's
Mhm.
like I was not really serious about music. I like loved
Mhm.
it. I knew it was my passion, you know, but I didn't know it was my war path. Like I'm gonna do this for the rest of my life. You know, I actually started like training wild mustangs when I was like a kid and riding
Yeah.
horses, and I wanted to be a rancher. I loved it. Like I've been riding horses since I was 3, and it was the best. But as we kept moving around, and you know, my mom had health problems, you know, and we just kept going around. That the constant thing in my life was music. You know, like you could always
Yeah.
bring a guitar wherever you went, and so I finally really like came into the fore with my music. Like I said, when I was 13, and I went down to the studio in L.A., my dad's best friend's studio, Peter Simon, Gollywood Studios, and we call him Rasta, and he brought us in. He was like, "Little Rasta," and we came in, and it was like, and it was just unbelievable because I went in there, and I had only been really, I got my chops up. I was writing songs like heavily for the first time on guitar,
Mhm.
and I
Yeah.
went into it, and it was like like lightning struck me. It was like there's something so beautiful about telling a story just through sound and music, that there's an
Mhm.
expression and meaning that has so much depth and beauty to it that like I just like I just it's a gift. It's
Yeah.
like from the unknown. It's just this spirit that comes within you, and then you can just, you know, channel it, and it's just this beautiful thing. And like I want to be successful. You know, I know that like that's why I'm like, you know, starting on like, you know, starting a business, doing what my dad does. But for me, like what I want to do with the rest of my life is just create beautiful
Yeah.
music, because
Yeah,
it's
I mean, when you find something where you're just in flow and you
yeah.
look up and 5, 6 hours have gone by, or, if you're like me, you start a project and you look up and it's like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning and you've been,
Yes.
messing with a little piece or part, you can barely keep your eyes open. I think that's like,
Yeah.
there's a lot to be said about finding that and expanding on that,
Yeah. That
I used
logos.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I just finished reading, you know, A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
That sounds familiar. I
It's
don't know that I've read that one, but yeah.
it's unbelievable. It's basically he's a Holocaust survivor, right? And he was a psychoanalyst, and
Yeah.
he came up with the idea of logotherapy, right? And so counter to like, because so basically the Freudian perspective is like, you know, like you have 10 people, they're starving, you know, the animal instinct, the drive to, you know, for starvation and hunger will make them all the same, right? And so
Mhm.
his whole thing, like, you know, like the century of self, and how like he thought that we were going to be consumed by our animal desires, right? And there was this like like hidden urge that we're all just, you know, don't we he basically took the humanity out of humans.
Mhm.
But the idea of how like if you had 10 people in a room, they're starving, and they all become the same with their same animal desires, and they could be from different walks of life, but that same, you know, just like urge and challenge will make them the same. But what happened with the local therapy in Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl, he basically, when he was in the concentration camps, he was taken there, and he basically turned his mission after he survived, to actually psychoanalyze and write books about his experience there. And it's very, very sad. But as he
Mhm.
talks about it, he talks about how we don't become the same through suffering. We actually
Mhm.
become extremely different, divergent. So
Mhm.
some people became so much more selfless, so much more religious, and so much they became more in tune to who they actually were. And some became, you
Mhm.
would say, devils. You know, they became they debased themselves. They would, you know, rat out other
Yeah.
prisoners, and so they would get extra food, or they would send other prisoners to the gas chambers. And it was horrible to see, but also
Mhm.
so eye opening to see that like, you know, there's this huge, you know, just separation when, you know, strife happens, and that's why like struggle, you know, defines meaning, you know, and that's why
Mhm.
like without struggle there is no meaning. And that's what
Mhm.
like logotherapy is, you know. So I was
Mm.
like reading that, And I was like, oh my gosh. It's like we find meaning through struggle. And it's like it's not like,
Mhm.
just one specific like meaning, like this is the meaning of life. It's like no, like
Yeah.
everyone's meaning is different. But like I was like writing music. I just got I did the post you did about Hermanos Gutierrez. I'm actually seeing them tomorrow night.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm so excited. I
Yeah,
you
that's gonna be
yeah,
awesome.
it's gonna be unbelievable. But yeah, I got inspired by them. I wrote the song that was like
Mhm.
similar to their style. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I want to write a song about, like the logos, the logo
Yeah.
therapy. Not just like this, the practice, but like the idea of like,
Mhm. Yeah.
struggle
Well,
of how
those things come about when you're living life, I mean, I think that's the thing about, like, songwriting is, like, you're out there trying to make a living, you're trying to, provide, you're trying to make a name, build
yeah,
something that you believe in. All of that is kind of ripe for, I mean, and then there's relationships, like you're gonna
yeah,
fall in and out of love, and
yeah,
maybe you'll have a family one day. Like, all of it
and
is, human condition. Like,
yeah,
there's so many things to write about the human condition.
yeah,
And so, yeah,
yeah.
best thing is to live it, and so you can
Yeah,
write about it, so.
yeah. I have so much more life to live, and it's exciting. I can't wait. Yeah, like one of my favorite things to do because my dad keeps telling me to meditate. He's like, you have to meditate, you have to visualize. And I just like running really hard for like miles. Yep. It's like, oh, but I've actually like when I do visualize, I always visualize myself like, Wolfpack,
Oh,
the
yeah. Yeah.
so like their video of them like playing Madison Square Garden, I like flipped out when I saw it. I'm like, I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna play Madison Square Garden like that. So that's like every time I'm like visualizing, I'm like, that's what I'm gonna live. That's like my
Yeah.
goal. But yeah, like I had this
Well,
question paper.
your dad's a wise man. I mean,
Yeah, he is.
maybe you should try meditating.
I will. Do you meditate?
I don't meditate. I should meditate. I do
Yeah,
visualize, though. I mean, and I do write a lot in my journal. And so
yeah,
I do believe in the power of manifestation. So, I like to write about future states of where I want to go, what I imagine my ideal day looking like. I do that quite a bit. But
very
yeah.
powerful. Yeah, so I also have this question paper. I was just like looking at it. I was
Okay.
yeah. Oh yeah, I remember. So like, well, what is your like writing process? Like, how do you start writing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different kind of entry points into it, but,
Yeah,
like, there's some catalyst. I'll either
yeah,
hear something, and you know, one form of it is writing it end to end. I'm hearing
mm,
a melody or a chord progression, and I'll just kind of build on top of that,
yeah,
layer in lyrics. But what's our process has been a lot lately is, like, we'll all get in a room together, no form or function or purpose, no preconceived kind of ideas, and we'll just kind of throw a key out there and see, what happens. Sometimes we'll bring little pieces to the room, and just build on top of those things. And I'll take those, Deagle do a rough mix of that and kind of
yeah,
send it out to everybody, and I'll listen to it. I'll stew on it for a couple days, and I'm typically writing in a journal most of the time, so I've just got like
yeah,
bits and pieces of ideas. So I'll go, if
yeah,
something's speaking to me, I'm listening to the song, and kind of first listening to like what it sounds like it wants to be. Is it
yeah,
triumphant? Is it sad? Is it going to be an anthem or whatnot?
yeah,
And so I let the song tell me what it's gonna be, and then I'm listening for melodies in it, and I typically send the guys back, like, a rough idea of where I think the melody might fall. Um, and lately, I've been actually adding a lot of, auxiliary, so I'll
yeah,
hear a synth, or I'll find, like, a cool sound, and I'll layer it in and try and
oh,
make it work. And
yeah,
yeah, and so I'll send, so in the same way that you sent me Long Night,
Yeah.
I'll kind of play with it, I'll,
Yeah.
add instrumentation. I didn't add any instrumentation to Long Night. I didn't think it needed any. It's very, very lush already. So some of the stuff that I get is pretty raw. So it's like a drum kit, like
Mhm.
bass line and a guitar line, like,
Yeah.
and I'll just loop that and maybe come up with another part.
Yeah.
But today it's like so easy to just like, play with
Um,
composition and the tools that we have. So, um,
it's
uh,
utterly amazing. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's so easy. I mean, the hardest part is just kind of like taking that first step into the
Yeah.
process. It's just like, um, and being inspired to be there.
Yeah.
Um, because sometimes I'll sit on a song and I'm just like, I'm just not feeling it. But then like 2 days later, I'll hear something,
Yeah.
and be like, oh, this is the greatest thing I've ever written.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Like
um,
it's
yeah,
it's
yeah.
crazy. Like literally, like I literally have like all these projects. I have this whole hard drive, and I
Mhm.
have hundreds of Logic projects. I'm on Logic, and
Yeah,
I have
yeah, me
all
too.
these different things. You're on Logic, awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
mhm, yeah.
I tried Ableton. I looked at others once, but I learned on Logic from when I was a kid, and it just works.
Yeah. Oh, totally, totally. I mean, I uh, we had Pro Tools back in the day,
Yeah,
and Deke works in Pro Tools. I'll just send him a bunch of stems,
yeah.
but yeah, I had just the other day, I had a buddy of mine send me this beautiful arpeggio riff.
Oh,
He's out in San Diego. He's got
cool.
2 kids now, and, just heard from him out of the blue. He's just like, "Hey, dude, check this out. I don't know if you could use it." And it just happened to be like perfectly in sync with like 131 BPMs. So, so I just dropped it in a session and drug it out and just like looped it. And it's probably one of the coolest things I've ever written. I sent it back to him full composition, and we've just been going back and forth on it like for the past
That
couple
is
weeks. But
exciting. That's
yeah, yeah, but it was just a video of him playing it, and I was just like, "Oh, I'm gonna
wow.
just rip the audio off of this." Yeah, yeah.
That is so cool. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to hear it. You gonna release it?
We've talked about,
Yeah,
we talked about releasing it, but we don't know if it'll be a Quiet Hounds thing yet. The guys hadn't heard it yet, so we're on, like, our 2nd or 3rd version of it, because we
okay.
just keep hearing new things. So
Yeah,
I'm just enjoying the process right now. I'm not really
yeah,
thinking about it, but we did have a brief conversation that it could be, oh, this could be like a maybe a um, featured artist, collab with QH, or I don't know, or maybe it could just be his song. I'm cool with that too.
that is so
Yeah,
cool. That is amazing.
yeah,
That
yeah,
that's just so cool. Yeah,
yeah.
it's crazy what you can do now. Like, I literally will have songs that I, like, will, like, scrap and not listen to forever. Like, I'm doing this, like,
Mhm.
this album, and it's gonna be more of, like, because I wanna know, what, like, I was thinking about, like, what's gonna sell, what's gonna, really gain a following, gain traction, and I was like, dance music. People love to dance. People want things that are rhythmic and beautiful, and so I don't want, like,
Mhm.
not like electronic, like techno, like,
Yeah,
no,
yeah, yeah.
that, but something that, like, comes from, the old, like, Motown, like,
Yeah.
disco, but then with something with more edge, maybe a little bit more punk. So, like, that's what I've been
Yeah. Oh, that's
and
really cool. That sounds
yeah,
cool.
I
And do
I
it I mean, do it in the way that you know how to do it. That's really
yeah,
unique to your sound and the tools that you have available to you. I think you could be onto something.
yeah, I'm really excited. It's gonna be amazing, but I half the songs are like I had all these old songs I was working with, and I'll, like, chop them in half, and then I, like, started, like,
Mhm.
literally, like, chopping up songs that I already did, and then, like,
Mhm.
slapping them on new songs, and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
and I started just, like, mixing and matching, and it's unbelievable what you can do nowadays. Like, I didn't
Mhm.
realize because when I first started out, I'm, like, literally playing the guitar, I'm doing one take through the whole song, I'm doing one take through
Mhm.
the whole song, and then I
Mhm.
started, like, watching videos of, like, Brian Wilson and the way
Mhm.
he started writing. He Good Vibrations was, like, 12 different studios or something? Like,
Oh, wow.
he recorded in so many different places in so many different
Yeah,
sections,
yeah.
and each thing is like a section. You can hear, like, the
Mhm.
tape cut, the sharp cut, you know?
Mhm.
And it's
Mhm.
like that's where the
Mhm.
the Beach Boys kind of like, composed, and it was just
Mhm.
unbelievable to hear. And so
Mhm.
after I got really influenced by, like Pet Sounds and like listening to that production style,
Yeah.
this whole record has been like I've been recording each section. It's just like maybe even just 10 bars, and then like
Totally.
figuring out how to like mix and match. And I'll literally put like the chorus in the beginning or the back, and I'll just
Mhm.
like puzzle pieces. And that's like
Yeah.
it's exciting.
That's
It's
fun.
really,
That's fun. It sounds
yeah,
like you're building out your parts bin, you just got a big parts bin, you just keep, like, compiling stuff. I mean,
yeah,
but a lot of the first QH songs were written like that in bits and pieces. So much
yeah,
so that well, after Megaphona was written, we all looked at each other and we're just like, we don't even know how to play these songs live because they were all built in the studio. They're all literally like built in the box.
yeah. It's
Oh, let's move this piece over here, move that piece over there. Oh, let's try this. Oh,
yeah,
let's add this. And so at the end of the day, we were like looking at listening to back to the record. We're like, this is awesome. We don't know how to play any of these songs.
that's exactly how
Yeah,
I feel. I
yeah,
literally I'll have songs that I have alternate tuning songs. I love alternate tuning, so I'll like
yeah, yeah.
put the whole thing in like just completely out of tune, and then I'll just
Hmm.
tune to just whatever sounds right, and then I'll write a song just on the spot to that,
Yeah,
just by ear. And I have so many songs, and I'm like, what? It sounds great, but like, what is that? I have
yeah.
no idea. And
Yeah.
then
Well,
I'll,
we're
I'll
we're yeah.
like
Where it
time
really
change.
comes together,
Yeah,
where all that comes together is when you're like, okay, James, it's now ready. It's time for you got a show. You got a show
yeah,
wherever, and you got to put this stuff together. The
yeah,
the live translation of it is half the fun for us. It's just like, okay, well, yeah, we did all that stuff in the studio. We can't do that on stage, but like,
yeah,
what's this? How's this going to translate? So that's a whole nother kind of movement to the progression of like releasing music into the world. I just, that's it. Personally,
yeah.
my favorite part is
Wow.
taking
Yeah,
that stuff live. So
yeah. I want to play live so much. I love playing live, but I've just been like in studio for so long. But yeah, it's
yeah.
like it makes the live
Mhm.
live experience so much more unique and special.
Mhm.
It's like
Yeah.
I've seen like multiple types of bands. Like I went to like a Billy Joel in Houston. It was
Mm.
unbelievable, but it was like better than the record, even though like it was like it sounded. He played the song, but he played it in such a way that was like. And then other people like Beck will like sometimes even like like remix the whole record and do something completely
Oh
different,
my god.
and
Yeah.
just do all acoustic, and you're like just him and a guitar, and it's yeah, it is really really fun to remix for the live because it
Yeah.
makes it like this like experience. It's just like just a moment, and it's perfect. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, James, I hate to cut the convo short, but I gotta get going. My family is
yeah, yeah,
downstairs, and I appreciate all the time. And I think what you're doing is an amazing. Your sound is just. I feel like you're just scratching the surface. So I'm really looking forward to what you're gonna put out into the world. Keep it up, man.
I will, and I it's just an honor for you to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's been
Yeah.
amazing.
Absolutely.
Sorry for the technical difficulties, but
Yeah. Yeah. No worries.
happens. But I'm glad that we got to continue forward. This has just been an amazing conversation. It's been
Yeah.
awesome, and I look forward to talking in the future and maybe recording more. Yeah,
All right, James. You
yeah.
have a good night, man. Happy
You too.
Thanksgiving.
Happy
All right, buddy.
Thanksgiving. Thank
Yeah.
you.
See ya.
Bye. See ya.